In a Britain still bruised by rationing, the kitchen was the most strategic room in the house. A single shilling had to walk further than a docker on payday, and a Sunday joint was never just a Sunday joint. It was Monday's hash, Tuesday's pie, Wednesday's stock, and Thursday's sandwich. We are counting down 25 cheap British meals that housewives stretched across an entire week, turning scraps into suppers and pennies into proper food. From broths that simmered for days to puddings that resurrected stale crusts, each dish tells a story of thrift, ritual, and quiet ingenuity. Expect cuts of meat the supermarkets forgot, flavors forged at the back of the range, and the steady drum of a frugal kitchen. Which stretched supper tops the list? Let's begin our countdown with number 25. Number 25. Bread and dripping anchored the working week when wages thinned and the larder grew quiet. Every drop of fat from Sunday's joint was poured into a small enamel basin, where it cooled into a pale gold disc edged with dark, jellied meat juices at the bottom. By Tuesday tea, housewives spread that dripping across thick slabs of yesterday's bread, finishing each slice with a small shake of salt. A £2 loaf cost just 11 pence in 1952, and the dripping was free, a bonus from a joint that had already done its proper duty. Children ate it before homework. Fathers ate it before the late shift. The taste of beef carried on through the week, even when the meat itself was long gone. It was hunger turned into something almost reverent, a meal that asked for nothing and gave just enough. Number 24. Bubble and squeak turned Monday morning into a ceremony of leftovers. The cold cabbage from Sunday's plate, the bowl of mash kept on the cool slab, perhaps a stray boiled carrot or a forgotten roast potato. All of it was tipped into a heavy iron pan with a knob of beef dripping. The vegetables hissed and squeaked in protest as they hit the heat, and the name stuck. Housewives pressed the mixture flat with a wooden spoon, waiting for the deep brown crust that decided the dish. Children fought over the crispy edges. Fathers ate it cold from a plate on the windowsill on the way to work. A whole supper conjured from yesterday's discards, costing nothing, asking only for a hot pan and a steady hand. It was the proudest meal in any thrifty kitchen. Number 23. Egg and chips stood as the universal answer to a Thursday tea when wages had thinned and the meat ration was already spoken for. Housewives peeled a pound of King Edwards, cut them thick, and dropped them into a deep pan of beef dripping kept on the back of the range. By 1955, a pound of potatoes cost less than 3 pence, and a pair of eggs added perhaps another 5 pence. The chips turned golden in the dripping, fluffy inside and crisp at the edges, while the egg sizzled in a separate pan, yolk soft enough to pour across the pile. Salt, vinegar, a thick slice of bread for mopping, and the whole family was fed for less than a shilling. It was the supper that bridged the gap between Sunday's joint and Friday's payday. No shame in its plainness. Number 22. Cheese on toast, properly made, kept the week ticking over when meat had vanished entirely. A small wedge of stale cheddar, the kind that had hardened at the edges and become useless for the cheese board, was grated coarsely over thick bread already browned beneath the grill. Housewives added a pinch of mustard powder, sometimes a splash of brown ale stirred in to loosen it, and slid the lot back under the heat until the cheese bubbled and freckled. In Wales it became rarebit, dressed up with cream and an egg yolk. Elsewhere it was simply tea on a Wednesday. A 2-ounce nub of cheese that cost 4 pence could feed 3 children and a hungry husband when paired with a bowl of soup. Few suppers asked for so little and gave back so much warmth in return. Number 21. Spam fritters carried the taste of post-war dependence into the 1960s, long after rationing had ended. A tin of Spam, shipped across the Atlantic and sold for less than $1, was sliced thick, dipped in pale batter, and dropped into hot beef dripping until the coating turned crisp and amber. Housewives served the fritters with chips and a generous splash of HP sauce, stretching one tin to feed 4 hungry mouths with change to spare. The salty pink meat divided households as sharply as it divided generations. Children gobbled it down with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for sweets. Fathers ate it in respectful silence, remembering harder years. Today, a Spam fritter is something of a joke, a meme from a thriftier age. But for a generation of working families, it was Tuesday's solid, dependable supper. Number 20. Bread and butter pudding turned the heels of the loaf into Sunday's finest pudding. Housewives saved every dry crust through the week, tucking them into a tin behind the flour bin until enough had gathered. By Sunday afternoon, those forgotten ends were buttered, layered into a battered Pyrex dish with handfuls of sultanas, doused in a custard of 2 eggs, a pint of milk, and a careful spoon of sugar. A grating of nutmeg, an hour in a low oven, and the kitchen filled with the scent of vanilla and warm fruit. The top emerged golden, crisp at the peaks, soft in the valleys where the custard had pooled. Served with a jug of evaporated milk poured thick and slow, it was proof that nothing in a careful kitchen was ever truly stale, just patient, waiting for its second life. Number 19. Rice pudding. Baked low and slow in the back of the oven, fed the family for 2 evenings on 3pence worth of short grain rice and a pint of milk. Housewives tipped the rice into a battered enamel dish, added a generous spoon of sugar and a knob of butter, then a grating of nutmeg across the top. The dish slid into the oven after Sunday's joint had finished, using the dying heat for the long, gentle bake that turned ordinary rice into something silken and golden. By 1955, 7 in 10 British households made rice pudding weekly. The skin on top, dark and faintly bitter, divided every kitchen in the land. Some children fought for it. Others scraped it aside with the absolute disgust only a 6-year-old can muster. Cold on Monday with jam, it became another full meal. Number 18. Peas pudding clung to the northeast as stubbornly as the coal dust on the windowsills. Housewives soaked yellow split peas overnight, tied them tight in a muslin cloth, and dropped the bundle into the pot, alongside a boiled bacon joint. The peas cooked in the salty, smoky liquor for hours, drinking up every ounce of flavor until they collapsed into a thick, golden paste. Mashed with a fork, finished with butter and a crack of pepper, peas pudding could be served hot on Monday, sliced cold on Tuesday, and spread on bread for Wednesday's lunch. A pound of dried peas cost less than 4 pence and fed a family of 6 across 3 suppers. The old Tyneside rhyme was no joke. Peas pudding hot, peas pudding cold, peas pudding in the pot, 9 days old. That was simply how it was done. Number 17. Mince and tatties anchored the Scottish weeknight with a simplicity that worked harder than any flashier supper. Housewives browned half a pound of cheap beef mince with a chopped onion in a heavy pan, sprinkled over a spoon of flour, then poured in a pint of beef stock and let the lot simmer until thick and glossy. A handful of frozen peas might join the pot, or a diced carrot for body. Served over a mound of floury mash with the gravy pooling in every hollow, it cost less than 9 pence and fed 4. Children mashed it together into one comforting brown heap. Fathers asked for second helpings without shame. The Tuesday leftovers, thinned with more stock and a few extra spuds, became Wednesday's mince pie, sealed under a sheet of short crust that turned a pound of mince into 2 proper suppers. Number 16. Liver and onions carried the strongest divide of any midweek meal, a dish you either anticipated or dreaded with equal intensity. Housewives bought a quarter-pound of lamb's liver for tuppence at the butcher's counter, knowing speed was everything in the cooking. Sliced thin, dusted with seasoned flour, it hit a screaming hot pan for less than a minute on each side. A pound of onions cooked slowly in beef, dripping turned sweet and dark beneath it, and a pool of thick gravy bound the lot together. Mashed potatoes mopped up every last smear. The smell, metallic and strong, drifted through terrace streets on a Wednesday evening, marking out the homes that still cooked the old offal. Cheap, packed with iron, ready in 15 minutes, liver kept growing children upright through hard winters when red meat was a Sunday luxury. Number 15. Toad in the Hole stretched half a pound of pork sausages into a meal that filled 6 plates and left nobody hungry. Housewives mixed a simple batter from 4 ounces of flour, 2 eggs, and half a pint of milk, then poured it into scalding hot beef dripping in a roasting tin where the sausages were already sizzling. The batter rose around them in great golden cliffs, crisp at the edges, soft and savory in the middle, where the sausage fat had soaked in. By 1962, the British were eating 1.5 sausages per person per week, and toad in the hole was the dish that made those sausages count. Served with thick onion gravy poured generously over the top, and with the leftover squares of cold batter eaten in lunch boxes the next day, it was the most cheerful supper a few pence could buy. Number 14. Pilchards on toast crossed every county line in Britain, a fallback supper that lived in the back of every pantry. Housewives kept a few tins of John West pilchards in tomato sauce on hand at all times, priced at less than 6 pence and capable of feeding 2 adults with bread and a cup of tea. The tin was upended into a small pan, warmed through with a splash of vinegar to lift the tomato, then spooned onto thick slices of toast, still hot from the grill. The oily fish soaked into the bread, the sauce ran down to the plate, and a sprinkle of pepper finished the lot. It was Thursday's tea, the meal between paydays, the supper that nobody bragged about, but everybody relied on. Cold pilchard sandwiches the next morning kept the workmen fed until 5. Number 13. Stovies sustained Scottish households through long working weeks with nothing more than the bones of Sunday roast and a sack of potatoes. Housewives sliced 2 pounds of King Edward's thin, layered them in a heavy pan with onions and the cold leftover meat from the joint, then poured over a pint of the dripping and gravy, saved in the cool pantry. The pan went on to the lowest heat for 2 hours, lid clamped tight, while the potatoes melted into the meat juices and the bottom layer turned dark and caramelized. A shake of salt, a sprinkle of pepper, and the dish was done. Eaten with oatcakes on Monday, reheated on Tuesday, finished cold from the bowl on Wednesday with brown sauce. Stovies were the perfect afterlife for a Sunday roast that had already given everything it had. Number 12. Faggots carried the working pride of the Black Country onto kitchen tables across the Midlands. Butchers in Wolverhampton and Dudley sold them by the pair for tuppence, plump balls of minced pig's liver, heart, and belly bound with breadcrumbs. Sage and onion, wrapped in a delicate veil of caul fat. Housewives bought 4 for a Friday tea, baked them in a deep tin with a thick onion gravy, and served them with mushy peas and floury mash. The faggots split open as they cooked, releasing their savory, herby filling into the gravy until the whole dish was bound together by flavor. A second pair, eaten cold on Saturday with pickle and bread, finished the week. They were the supper that turned every part of the pig into something worthy of the dinner plate. Number 11. Corned beef hash filled the working-class kitchen with a smell that was unmistakable and inescapable. Housewives prized open a tin of Fray Bentos corned beef, shipped from Argentina and sold for less than a shilling. and broke the dense pink slab apart with a fork. Diced cold potatoes from Sunday's roast, a finely chopped onion, and a generous spoon of beef dripping joined it in a hot pan. The hash was pressed flat, left to crisp, flipped once, then served with a fried egg on top and a puddle of HP sauce on the side. A single tin stretched to feed 5 on Tuesday, with the leftovers cold in a sandwich on Wednesday, and the last spoonfuls stirred into Thursday's soup. Cheap, salty, satisfying, it was the meal that proved a careful kitchen. Never let a tin sit idle. Number 10. Boiled bacon and cabbage anchored the Wednesday table when Sunday's joint had finally surrendered. Housewives bought a small bacon joint at the butcher for under 2 shillings, soaked it overnight in cold water to draw out the salt, then simmered it slowly with carrots, onions, and a peppercorn or 2. Half an hour before serving, a whole cabbage was cut into wedges and dropped into the salty, porky liquor, where it turned tender and sweet and tasted of nothing else on earth. The meat was carved thick for Wednesday's supper, sliced cold for Thursday's sandwiches, and the cooking liquor became Friday's pea soup base. A single bacon joint anchored 4 separate meals across the week. Nothing went down the sink or was thrown away. Every shilling stretched as far as it could possibly go. Number 9. Kedgeree brought a whisper of the Raj back into ordinary British kitchens. Housewives flaked a small, smoked haddock fillet, costing 6p at the fishmonger, into a pan of cooked long-grain rice with 2 hard-boiled eggs, a generous knob of butter, a chopped onion softened in dripping, and a careful pinch of curry powder. The whole dish came together in 20 minutes and fed 4 with the kind of fragrant comfort that felt almost exotic on a damp Thursday morning. Originally a breakfast, Kedgeree migrated to supper time in the 1950s when fish was cheap and rice was cheaper. The leftovers were spooned cold into pastry cases and baked the next day as a fish pasty, finishing the haddock without waste. A modest fillet, a handful of pennies. 2 suppers stretched from a single small fish. Number 8. Cottage pie rose from the ashes of Sunday's joint. With a kind of glorious second wind, housewives ran the leftover beef through a hand mincer clamped to the kitchen table, the cold meat falling in pale pink ribbons into a waiting bowl. A chopped onion, a diced carrot, a generous splash of Worcestershire sauce, and the remains of Sunday's gravy bound it together. The lot was tipped into a deep pie dish, topped with a thick blanket of mashed potato, scored across the top with a fork, dotted with butter, and baked until the peaks browned and the gravy bubbled up through the cracks. Tuesday's cottage pie was the meal that proved Sunday's joint had a second act. Reheated again on Wednesday for those who came home late, it gave the joint a 3rd week of usefulness. Number 7. Lancashire hot pot crowned the Northern Monday with the dignity of a dish built to feed a working family on almost nothing. Housewives layered cheap mutton chops, costing 1 shilling 8p a pound, with sliced onions and floury potatoes in a heavy earthenware pot. A pint of stock from Sunday's joint went over the top, the potatoes overlapping like roof tiles, dotted with dripping for the brown crust. 3 hours in a slow oven turned the mutton tender, the onions silken, and the top a deep amber gold. It was a dish that could sit on the back of the range all day while the family worked the mills. Tuesday's leftovers, warmed through with a fresh splash of stock, fed everyone again. A single shilling's worth of mutton, 8p of vegetables, 2 suppers stretched from 1 pot. Number 6. PEA and ham soup lived on the hob from Monday to Friday in mining villages across the country. Housewives bought a ham bone for 4p at the butcher's, sometimes already stripped of meat, and dropped it into a deep pot with 12 ounces of dried split peas, a chopped onion, and a few peppercorns. The pot simmered all day on the lowest heat, sometimes covered, sometimes not, while the peas collapsed and the bone surrendered every last shred of flavor. By Tuesday evening, the soup was thick enough to stand a spoon in. By Wednesday, it had thickened further and was thinned with a fresh pint of water. Served with hunks of bread and a knob of butter melting on top, it cost pennies and fed the family for 3 nights running. The pot was rarely emptied, only topped up and started again. Number 5. Welsh coal held the hearth of every mining valley from Snowdonia to the Rhondda. Housewives filled a heavy iron pot with bacon, leeks, carrots, parsnips, potatoes, swede, and a knuckle of cheap lamb, then covered the lot with cold water and set it to simmer for hours. The caul was best made on Sunday and eaten on Monday, when the flavors had settled and the broth had turned cloudy and rich with marrow. By Tuesday it was thicker still. By Wednesday it was practically a stew. Served in deep bowls with chunks of crusty bread and a wedge of crumbly Caerphilly cheese on the side, it asked nothing of the cook beyond patience. The pot sat back on the range each night to start again. A few shillings worth of vegetables and bones fed a Welsh family from Sunday tea right through to Wednesday supper without a single complaint. Number 4. Steak and kidney pudding brought the proper Sunday treat to working-class kitchens for less than half the price of a roast joint. Housewives bought 8 ounces of stewing steak and 4 ounces of ox kidney from the butcher for under a shilling, dusted the cubes in seasoned flour, and packed them into a pudding basin lined with suet pastry. A splash of brown ale, a finely chopped onion, a bay leaf, and the lid of pastry sealed the lot. The basin steamed for 4 hours over a low flame, the kitchen windows fogging up until the glass ran with condensation. When the pudding was turned out onto the plate, the pastry split open and the dark gravy poured out across the dish. Sunday's centerpiece, Monday's reheated supper, Tuesday's cold slice in a sandwich, a single cheap pudding stretched across 3 meals. Number 3. Scouse belonged to Liverpool with a fierceness that no supermarket ever managed to capture. Housewives browned a pound of cheap stewing beef or scrag-end lamb in beef dripping, added 2 diced onions, 4 sliced carrots, and a pile of cubed potatoes, then covered the lot in water and set the pot to simmer for 3 hours. By the time it was ready, the potatoes had half collapsed into the broth, thickening it naturally, while the meat had fallen apart into soft strands that fell off the spoon. Served with pickled red cabbage and crusty bread on Monday evening, the pot was set back on the range and reheated each night for 3 more suppers. Blind scouse, made without meat when wages were thin, fed dock workers and their families just as well. Scousers took their name from the dish itself, a badge of identity carved out of necessity. Number 2. Oxtail stew transformed the cheapest cut on the butcher's block into the richest supper of the working week. Housewives bought a whole oxtail for just over a shilling, chopped into segments and dusted in seasoned flour, then browned slowly in beef dripping until each piece was deep mahogany. 2 onions, 3 carrots, a turnip, a sprig of thyme, a pint of beef stock, and the pot went into the oven for 4 hours. The result was extraordinary. The meat fell from the bone in glossy strands. The cooking liquor turned thick and silken with natural gelatin, almost setting on the spoon. Served Tuesday with mashed potato, the leftovers were reheated. Wednesday with dumplings dropped into the gravy, and Thursday saw the last of the broth strained and clarified into a clear consomme. 3 suppers, a shilling and twopence, no waste. And finally, in first place, the Sunday roast and its week-long afterlife crowned the British kitchen as the most remarkable feat of household engineering ever achieved on a working wage. A single shoulder of mutton, a small joint of brisket, or a whole boiling chicken, bought for under 3 shillings on Saturday afternoon, anchored an entire week of suppers. Sunday saw the joint served hot with roast potatoes, Yorkshire pudding, and 3 vegetables, the gravy made from the pan juices. Monday became cold cuts with bubble and squeak, the leftovers carved thin and laid on plates with pickle. Tuesday was cottage pie, the mince worked through with onion and topped with mash. Wednesday saw rissoles or fritters, the last shreds of meat bound with breadcrumbs and fried in dripping. Thursday's lunch was sandwiches made with what remained on the bone. Friday, the carcass became stock, bubbling for hours with carrot tops and onion skins, then strained into a basin for the weekend soup. The bones themselves were sometimes boiled twice, the second pot thinner than the first, but still flavorful enough to anchor a vegetable broth. Nothing was thrown away. The dripping went into a basin for next week's pastry. The string was untied and saved. Even the paper the joint had come wrapped in was used to start the fire. A single joint, 3 shillings, 7 days of meals for a family of 6. It was the engine that drove the British working-class kitchen for half a century, the meal that proved a careful housewife could feed a family on almost nothing if she planned, simmered, and refused to waste a single scrap. Across all 25 entries, from the humble bread and dripping that opened our list to the magnificent Sunday roast that crowned it, these stretched meals tell the same quiet story. They were the suppers of women who could not afford to waste, who saw a Sunday joint not as a single meal, but as the foundation for 7, who knew that a ham bone, a tin of pilchards, or a few cold potatoes could carry a family from one payday to the next. The art has not entirely vanished, but it has thinned, replaced by the bright aisles of the supermarket and the cellophane ease of a ready meal. Tell me in the comments which of these stretched meals your nan still made, which one you would bring back tomorrow, and which one you genuinely think your kids might eat without complaining. Because behind every one of these dishes was a woman with a sharp knife, a steady pan, and the absolute refusal to let a single shilling slip through her fingers. Now you know how she did it.